Thank you, club and guests. This is a topic that is very close to my heart. It's one of my passions, one of my hobbies, is gardening. And there's a lot of spiritual lessons that I learned from gardening. God teaches us in the parables. There's a story in Matthew 13:24 through 29, the parable of the tares, and I'm going to read that to you. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servant came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may root up the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn." So you can gain a lot of lessons just by thinking about this parable. And that's one thing that I do sometimes while I'm gardening. I go out and pull weeds, and I'm thinking about some of these parables. And so that one speaks to me. One of the main lessons I learned from that parable is that sometimes in the church, we can have Christians and we can have what God calls tares. And he said, okay, the important thing to remember here is that the plants, this is you, this is me, okay? So a Christian can be growing alongside what God calls a tare or a weed. The tare looks just like the wheat. So sometimes, we're hurt by other Christians, and, I'm not saying I think that everyone who might do something wrong in the church is a tare, because we all still sin. We have, problems and things like that. But that's one thing that it made me aware of in this parable. Okay, the next story I want to reference is Romans 11 through 36. And it tells how the Gentiles were brought into the family of God. Okay, and Paul explains that we are like wild olive branches that are grafted into the olive tree. And so a place is made for us to be called into this family of God. And the thing that this lesson speaks to me about is, he says at the end of this story, don't be arrogant. We can't look at the Jews and say, because they rejected Jesus and they had all this knowledge, and here we are following the true path of Christ, right? So we can't be arrogant about that. We have to realize, that we could also lose our place just as easily if we're arrogant. We want to take what he's saying here and be humble. Okay, another story, Jesus tells of a father who says to his son, "Go work in the vineyard today." And the boy says, "I will go." But then he gets lazy or whatever, he just doesn't go. And the other son, he tells to go, he says, "No, I want to go." Okay, but then later he changes his mind and he says, "Okay, maybe I should go, I'll go." Okay, so he does it. And Jesus asks, which one of these did his father's will? And I have to ask myself, sometimes I say, "I will, Lord, I'll do whatever you say," but, maybe I don't. So I really have to warn myself. Okay, so besides the lessons that we learn in the Bible from the parables and that Jesus gives us, there are other ways that being out in the garden where God speaks to me. Okay, for one, I want to show you this plant. This plant has a condition that is known as being root bound. Okay, so the roots are all around. They're kind of binding up the plant because it's been in this pot a little too long. And what it needs is more space. It needs to be planted somewhere where it's got plenty of rich, healthy soil around where it can grow. And then it's going to grow really big. Okay, Another lesson I've learned is that each plant needs different conditions. Okay, I planted my iris right in the middle of a little circle in my garden, and I put chrysanthemums all around it, and the chrysanthemums grew so much bigger than I expected, so now I have to move my iris and put it out somewhere where people are going to be able to see it. Okay, so I think when I'm in the garden, I think about the soil. I think about where Jesus said, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, then it doesn't bear fruit. I think that seeds are miracles. They speak of God's goodness, and each plant has millions of seeds in it that come forward to promote new growth. And so sometimes that happens even without our effort, where little plants spring up from these seeds that have fallen, and it makes me think of God's generosity and how amazing God is. Thank you.